you see. You don't offer a theory to resolve existential anxiety any more than you use a hammer to wash your face. It's the wrong tool. The existentialist is not trying to refute an opponent by appeal to some universal norms of reason. No. He's not trying to define the universal essence of human nature, as in the Aristotelian or Thomistic tradition. And certainly not trying to achieve some objective detachment from the whole business. You see. No, rather, he's trying to describe the predicament in an illuminating way. To describe and illuminate the situation, the mess in which we find ourselves. Trying, if you like, to uncover what it is that we dread. So trying to describe these existential characteristics of individual existence, the concern. The emphasis is upon the individual as a subject who consciously feels her existence. You see? A subject with all of the inwardness that accompanies I, the subject. You see? Even Jerry Brown's "we the people" is too objective and impersonal. Because the we doesn't have an inwardness, a feeling of this sort. It's the individual I. So a descriptive task. And in this, I think it's fair to say that existentialism is influenced in its beginnings in the 19th century, is influenced very plainly by Kant and by Hegel, neither of whom were existentialists, but without whom, I think it's fair to say, there would never have been existentialism, at least not in any form that we know. There may have been earlier existential motifs in earlier thinkers, Augustine, Pascal, you see, but not the existentialism we know. Kant's influence, yeah, Kant's Copernican revolution, which, as you recall, was moved from the view that we're objective, detached observers of a world and conform ourselves, our thinking, to what the world is. Moving from that, the revolution, moving from that to the view that the world is going to be conformed to us, to what we are, bring inwardly. And so it is the Kantian emphasis on the transcendental self, the transcendental ego that is uncovered, that is presupposed in the forms of intuition and the categories of understanding, you see. This self which brings its own structures and meanings to the world. Now, that sort of theme is running throughout the existentialists. So, Kant's influence there. Hegel's influence, yeah, the dialectic. The dialectic of an unfolding self-consciousness. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis. The synthesis becoming a thesis for a new antithesis. You see, this unfolding of the self-consciousness. Now, admittedly, Hegel had used this dialectic in moving from one essence to another essence and so on and so forth. It's a theoretical dialectic. For Kierkegaard, it's an existential dialectic. You see, in the concreteness of our feelings, we move from thesis to antithesis and synthesis. Unless, in the final analysis, as with Sartre, there's no final synthesis. Which is why Sartre is the pessimist he is. So that when you read Sartre's Transcendence of the Ego next week, what you'll be finding in the act of being self-conscious in any kind of a world. Yes, sir. Not just creating meaning, but creating itself. So that you and I are big nothings. And we create ourselves, as it were, afresh in every act of thinking, seeing, participating, and so forth. Well, and this is a dialectical process. Well, you'll find that Kant's description of thesis, antithesis, synthesis in terms of immediacy, mediation, mediation, and then the next step, the synthesis, whatever that is, that immediacy, mediation, those terms characteristic in existential writers. In addition, from Hegel, the phenomenological description. You see, the phenomenological method. That's Hegel's. So keep in mind that servant-master dialectic, because that sort of dialectic of the self-consciousness is going to be common. One other theme, perhaps, from Hegel, the matter of freedom. Remember, Hegel said that the overall process of history is the absolutization of freedom. The development of the full self-consciousness is the absolutization of its freedom. Well, the existentialist forgets about any teleology in history, but finds absolutization of freedom. You see, the individual's freedom. Not part of some absolute of a Hegelian sort, but as individual. And as a result, the movement is for the existentialist from existence to essence, you see. From being, being, if that's what you mean by existence, via becoming, you see, to another kind of being, capital B, essence rather than existence. You'll find that in Heidegger, for instance, this mere existence is referred to as Vorhandensein, just being on hand like any other object. You see, no inwardness of identity at all. Vorhandensein. Or, if you like, as Dasein. That there. There it is. Merely object. As distinct from existence. Yeah, that's the meaningful thing. Terminology varies from one to another. But the emphasis is on the process of unfolding existential self-consciousness in finding, creating authentic existence for oneself. Okay, those are the general characteristics. Let me add this, that having said that, there are different varieties of existentialism, in which some of these characteristics are more prominent than others. There are some, for instance, who are quite irreligious. And there are other existential thinkers who are religious. Now, obviously, Kierkegaard is one of the religious and Nietzsche is one of the irreligious. So we get our sample there. But the other religious ones, names like Gabriel Marcel, French Catholic writer, who was so disgusted with another irreligious one, namely Sartre, that he refused to call himself an existentialist and coined the phrase philosophy of existence instead. Marcel. Or Paul Tillich, the Protestant theologian. Or Martin Buber, the Jewish philosopher. You see? Whereas the irreligious down here, you've got Sartre, you've got Heidegger, so on and so forth. Okay. Now, just that distinction tends to trigger another distinction. Because in people like Marcel and Buber particularly, you get the realization that meaning, authentic existence, is found in relationship. It's Buber who coined, not coined, but popularized the term I-thou, hyphenated, you see, who says that the basic word is not I, not thou, but I-thou. And the I only has meaning as abstracted from the relationship. But the experience of we-ness is prior to the experience of the solitary I. Okay? And I think in young children that's